Hi everybody, my name's Jane Dauncey. I'm a drama producer based in Wales. I'm actually moonlighting at the moment from a shoot, but welcome to BAFTA Cymru's TV career session, which is part of our Guru Live online Spring 2021 programme. BAFTA Cymru is running a joint initiative with BAFTA Scotland to celebrate and inspire a new generation of Scottish and Welsh talent with a week of special panels and masterclasses. And today's session is supported by Screen Alliance Wales, Pontio and Bangor University. A little bit of housekeeping. Is that me? Sorry. All these virtual events are part of BAFTA's learning work to share expertise from film, game and television with audiences far and wide. If you check out BAFTA.org and all of BAFTA's social channels for more activity and news, you can join the conversation on social using the hashtag GuruLive, all one word. You can ask your questions anytime during this session, and please send them in via the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom. The housekeeping, I think, is we have 45 minutes in which I'll ask open questions to our panel of three, and then we'll go over to the questions that you guys have put in. So without more dithering, could I please welcome our three speakers? So David P. Davis, who is executive producer at Bad Wolf, which is a huge and very successful drama company. Siwan Phillips, who is head of production at Boom Cymru, a very broad-based production company that makes all kinds of things. And Zoe Rushton, who is talent executive at BBC Studios. So where we're going to start is, I just wanted to ask first David and then perhaps Zoe to give us a quick overview of the television industry in Wales. Go, David.
Great, yeah, so thanks for having me here. So I think that right now, like the television industry in general is, it's just going through a boom period. And especially in South Wales, there's numerous projects shooting. I work for Bad Wolf, and we've got I'm doing a show called Industry that's going to start shooting in July, and His Dark Material season 3 is about to go. And I know that it's going through a boom period because crewing up for those shows is extremely difficult. We keep getting this phrase, which is it's extremely busy out there, which is starting to become the most boring phrase that somebody repeats to me on a daily basis. But it's great for the industry, as a whole, whether you're crew or editorial or your scripts, or you're a director, producer, whatever it is. Right now, we're definitely, I think, in kind of a golden age of television production, and especially in South Wales, not just from the production companies that are sort of based in South Wales, like Boom and Bad Wolf. I think Urban Myth have their offices in South Wales as well, but also just people who are using Wales as a filming location. So we've got lots of Hollywood projects that we're just competing against for crew and for talent. So yeah, it's a great place to be.
Thank you. Zoe, do you want to talk a little bit about the kind of range of work that this industry, this growing industry in Wales is crying out for?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously David comes from a drama world. My world is more factual, entertainment, music, that kind of thing. So, but in general, I mean, the range of jobs that people haven't even thought of is incredible. I mean, when people say, oh, I'd love to work in telly or film, it's often either your directors or your craft, camera, sound, that kind of thing. But we're finding that we're just not getting people coming through who want to do the sort of production management side, the sort of hidden roles, if you like. which range, you know, you start off doing sort of office admin and things like that. And I always say, you know, if you're going to go into an admin job anyway, as your sort of entry level role, then surely it's much more fun to do it on a TV production than in Admiral or something, you know. So please, you know, don't write off those kind of hidden roles, and we're doing as much as we can to kind of raise the profile of those roles. I mean, if you think about a TV production, yes, you've got all the creative roles, but you've got all the admin roles, you've got all the kind of HR, recruiting, you've got, you know, business affairs, legals and stuff like that. There's a whole host of jobs that, you know, you can easily Google and find out about. And there's, because they're not so well known, there's a huge gap in the market for them, and we're crying out for production coordinators, production assistants, that kind of thing.
Do you mind if I jump in as somebody who sort of bridges between what David does and Zoe does? Because at Boom we do drama, but we also do a lot of non-drama. And I think Wales is becoming such a strong production hub at the moment. There's so many initiatives to commission more content from the nations and regions. You know, Channel 4 and the BBC have committed to it. There's been such a strong drama hub here for such a long time, and I think that non-scripted is catching up really quickly. There's lots of new and exciting but sustainable commissions coming out of Wales at the moment. So I think it's sort of, I think David said, the golden age really. And what we have to do is sort of encourage new entry level, because we do need to catch up with the need. There's a demand and we need to provide the need for it and support that new level industry across every genre that we're producing.
I think one little hint from me, as well as Googling, but if you watch a lot of television or film, you get to that point in the show where they're rolling the credits at the end. And sometimes they do seem to go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. But what they are listing is everybody who supported that filming. So, you know, you're down to the chauffeur for the stars, or, you know, the electricians. There are so many interesting roles. Also the roles that were always a mystery to me, like what actually does a grip do? Well, I mean, a grip just works with everything that a camera sits on, but that actually can be complicated. It can be a dolly, it can be a slider, it can be, but you know, there's so many really, really interesting roles that people just never think about.
And I think when we do a lot of outreach work with schools and colleges, when you say to people, do you know that we have accountants? Do you know that we need chefs? We need catering, we need carpenters, it's not people in front of the camera and behind the camera in terms of producer directors. So I think, again, it's sort of very important to sort of, you know, get that message out there that, like Zoe said, the variety of roles is huge.
I wonder, David, whether perhaps you and Sioan could give us a quick heads up on who the main company players are in Wales at the minute.
In terms of people who service us, if you like.
I think both, yes, that's a good call.
So, I mean, just because you were talking about all of the different, almost like tradespeople, really, who work on a film set, like, and you don't really think of like whatever film needing like plumbers, needing sparks, but they do, you know. And so we use a company called Forward quite a lot, that do all of our construction, the building of the sets, all of that sort of stuff. And we've got, we use a company called Painting Practice. These are all companies that have kind of been set up or have been able to be elevated because of all of the amazing work that's happening in South Wales right now in the, you know, the big kind of big HBO size productions. So like Painting Practice, who do all of the kind of puppeteering and stuff for and the design for His Dark Materials, and Forward, who design all of our sets. And you know, and another company, I think we're going to come on to that kind of element of it a little bit later, but Screen Alliance Wales, that was, I think, was set up by Bad Wolf, but also help service all of our shows in terms of finding trainees and things like that. I've got some facts and figures which I can quote later, but they're like the three big ones really that I think that are just that service us and are keeping South Wales thriving.
How about you, Sue-Ann? What would you say?
Ours is a bit different to David because we don't do things, we're not sort of on the same scale as those kind of productions. But most of the people that we use, we sort of rely on our freelance community. You know, we've got lots of really fantastic heads of departments here working in Wales across our dramas, and they sort of can crew up themselves. But most of our work is sort of non-drams, non-scripted. So we don't need those big service companies, but we do use a lot of freelancers. I think we have about 150 people on staff, but I'd say that possibly, depending on what else is going on and if we've got a drama, we're employing about 100 to 150 freelancers at the same time. So our sort of, our core is that talented baseline freelancer availability in Wales at the moment.
Yeah, I'd second that as well. I mean, you'd think a big sort of company like BBC Studios would mainly be staff people, but we've got about 15 continuing staff, that's all, and then about 150 freelancers at any one time. So most of the jobs at the moment, well, not at the moment, that's the way it's going to be, you know, a project based. You get employed for that particular project, and then you go to, you know, Boom or Badwell for somewhere else for your next project. You know, it's not jobs for life like it was, you know, years ago.
I've just realised something I think is worth pointing out is the bit that isn't the tip of the iceberg. So post-production is also a massive employer, whether it's post-production runners or assistant editors, and then there is a whole world of track lay, meaning fiddling with the sound, music composition, music copyright, and again, these are the sort of hidden jobs. But if you as an individual, you're able to identify your strengths and your interests, there probably is a job that will suit you. Yeah. You may just need to dig around for it. David.
I was actually going to mention Bang SFX, who did the sound for us on Industry, and also Gorilla, where we did all of our online, so the post-production there. And so, you know, and they're, you know, great South Wales based companies as well that service us and we service them, and so there are a lot of opportunities. Yeah,
absolutely. Gorilla is I'm sure you know, Gorilla comes under the Boom umbrella, and they are fantastic. Rich, who runs Gorilla, is fantastic at bringing in new entry level wherever he possibly can, and the demand has grown so quickly that Gorilla is another company that, if that's where your interest lies, it's always worth sort of keeping an eye on their website and seeing what's available, because there's so much need for new technical skilled people as well.
Could you talk a little bit, perhaps let's start with Zoe, about the general entry points into telly, which I'm afraid is a huge subject.
It is a huge subject, yeah. And you speak to anyone in telly or film, and the way they've come in and moved through the system, as like, it is always different. Like, it's really interesting, because no matter who you speak to on set or in the office, all of us have come through a different route. Me personally, I started in the year 2000 on 2 weeks work experience, unpaid, and then just got kept on as like a casual, just making tea, running tapes around, because everything was on tape then. And then got employed for like 3 months, and then it just went on, and I've never left. So, and then other people have come through a more kind of formal route of maybe an apprenticeship or a sort of graduate traineeship if they've been to uni or whatever. There's ways through like that where they've come through a more kind of structured route. But mostly it's just picking up one job, which then leads to another job. You know, it's a very people-based industry where the more contacts you can make, the better off you're going to be. I mean, there's so many networking sessions available now on Zooms, you know, Screen Skills run them, Screen Alliance Wales, BAFTA, RTS. Like, there are so many opportunities to sort of meet and speak to other industry people, that there's no excuse not to make contacts, really. And if you can get actual names of people to email in companies, it's a lot easier when they've kind of virtually met you already than just cold calling, you know, and sending speculative CVs which might never get to the person. But yes, I mean, we have an apprenticeship scheme that's live at the moment, and that ranges. Funny you should mention grip. You know, in drama there's grip, there's costume, there's art department, there's some journalism ones. In ours it's a general production in factual, so that's a kind of a more structured route. But then I'd say, you know, starting as a runner, picking up daily work, weekly work on set, so you can build your CV and get some credits. You know, that's kind of the usual way people move through it.
David, do you want to give a quick shout out for Screen Alliance? Oh, I'm going to give a shout out for Women in Film and Television as well, which is an excellent group. You don't actually have to be a woman. I think there have been huge opportunities through lockdown for free access to both training and networking. That I think will continue, and just get on it, I would say. Sorry, David.
No, that's okay. So yeah, Screen Alliance Wales, which was set up in conjunction with Bad Wolf, and I'm a huge supporter of fair and equal employing, like opportunities for employing, especially within the industry, which has been forever like coffee shop kind of based interviews, and it makes it a closed circuit, not necessarily deliberately, but almost just by the design of the way that it works. So actually just being able to advertise openly in a way that most other industries do, like, I think is a great thing. And that is something that Screen Alliance Wales, or SAW, does. I'm just going to read some facts and figures that they've helpfully sent through for me. It's like, so in 2020, 2021, there was 94 jobs that were advertised, 10 plus companies generating 2,500 applications. 20 out of 22 Welsh local authorities, 40% from Cardiff, 39% of applicants were Welsh speakers, 54% of them were applicants were female. Like, there's more and more and more stats that I could read, but I don't need to. I mean, I just think that it's like an amazing thing on industry. I've advertised like all of my script editor roles and things like that. And when I was looking for a new assistant, like everything gets advertised so that it doesn't matter where you are. I mean, you do need to be aware of the platform, of course, and they're doing more and more and more to make themselves known wider. But basically, it doesn't matter where you're from or who you are or what you're doing. It's like you can advertise, you can apply for the job like any other job. And I think that's a great thing.
I'm just going to put a little, negative spin in here, because I think we're all really enthusiastic about what we do, love our jobs. I think it is always worth flagging that it is highly competitive. And you just need to stay strong, not to have your heart broken. But if you are determined, and you can bounce back from a lot of no's, then you will get there. But it is competitive, and David was just giving a quickie figure about how many applicants they had, and I think that's worth noting, so that when you get no's, you don't take it personally. You just go, well, I was 1 in 100 there in that race, and that time I lost it. What do I do to strengthen my CV, or strengthen my attitude, or improve my interview skills, or whatever? You do have to, I don't know if fight is the right word, but you do have to stick at it, don't you?
Definitely. I mean, I think that in this industry, like, I work a lot in development as well, and like, you hear way more no's than you do yeses, actually. And that's like at all stages, whether it's trying to get a new gig as a producer director or a script editor, whether you're trying to get your show green lit, you know, whether you're trying to get your show a second series. Like it's much more likely that you're going to hear no than you are going to hear yes, but you just need to keep at it, because keeping at it is how you get the yes eventually. So just, yeah, don't be disheartened, for sure.
I wonder if Zoe and Siwan, you'd like to talk about, you know, what you need to do to break in, CVs.
Yeah, do you know, Zoe and I have had discussions about CVs. I can't underestimate the importance of a good CV, because as we just discussed, it's such a competitive industry that you can be inundated, and you need your CV to be concise and clear and to the point. So, you know, I know that if it's of any help to anyone, I know the BBC Academy website has got a really good page on writing a CV for the industry, specific for the industry. I know that Screen Skills also run a free course on preparing CVs, and I'd urge anybody to sort of go back and have a look at those and sort of relook at your CV to make it sort of the best it possibly can be for those people. I know you agree with that, Zoe, don't you? And
yeah,
you get a lot more than I do, in fact.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd say, especially with entry level, say, for example, you see a shout out on Facebook runners group or whatever, and it's specific, it'll always specifically ask for looking for a runner for next Monday who has worked with talent and can drive. So that clearly those are the two main things that the company is looking for. So when you send your CV, spend half an hour before you send your generic CV, tailoring your CV and just save it for that particular, you know, response. And right at the top, you put, I've got a full clean driving license and I've worked with big name talent, you know. So the first thing that the hiring manager sees is that you've exactly what they need. And I'd say it's always worth doing that before you send any CV to anyone, if it's in a response to an ad or a shout out. Obviously, when you're doing when you're just speculatively sending a CV to a company or to somebody, you know, asking if they've got any opportunities, you've got to sort of take a punt and make it a bit more generic. But I'd say, especially when starting out, because you're not going to have loads and loads of experience, and we wouldn't expect you to because you're at entry level. But that sort of bit at the top where the bullet point skills is what's going to get you noticed, you know. So even if you've only worked, you know, in retail or, you know, a waiter, a waitress, though there are transferable skills there that you can put right at the top to get you noticed. You've worked with people, perhaps you've worked with money, you know, you've been trusted to do certain things, key holder, whatever, and they are the sort of skills that are transferable, definitely.
I get quite a lot of people asking me for either work experience or work. And the thing that most annoys me is the dear sir or madam, because in the age of the internet and Google, there is no excuse for that. And I am much more likely to get back to you if you write, you know, dear Jane, I absolutely loved your most recent program, blah, 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 because I'm a sucker, like
everybody is, yeah.
Yes.
And then the other thing I think that's really helpful before you press go on a covering letter or a CV is to look at it from, as it were, my point of view, the busy employer with the stack, and just go, well, you know, it's very valid for you to say, I am an assistant editor and what I want to do is I want to work on this, I want to work on that. Okay, fine. But what I'm looking for is what can you do for me? So if you think it through from my position, what can you do for me? You may be able to clean my fridge, make my coffee. More importantly, because you will be younger, you will probably have social media skills, publicity skills,
yeah,
editing skills, technological skills that I do not have. So please tell me about them, because I'll be happy then.
And also, like, do your homework on the company is so important. Like, I've seen so many times people, often when you get to interview stage, actually, when the sort of icebreaker question is often like, right, tell us what you've been watching on TV lately, what have you been enjoying? Like, it's so easy to gain a few brownie points there, you know. Just do a bit of homework beforehand and say that, oh, I really enjoyed his Dark Materials or something. If you go and, you know, it just shows respect for the people interviewing you. It shows that you've taken time, even if it's not something you'd usually watch, you know, because you're taking it seriously. You've done your homework, done a bit of research, and it's just such an easy, quick fix, you know. And you can Google the company, look at what productions it makes, because often people assume if it's on ITV, it's made by ITV, or if it's on BBC, it's made by BBC. Well, it's not at all, you know. It's 90% of the time it's made by an independent company. So make sure you do your homework for sure. And that helps with cover emails as well. If you can drop that in the cover email, I really, as you said, Jane, you know, I really enjoyed your show last week about so and so and so. It just shows respect, and it shows you've done your homework and you're taking it seriously.
And just picking up on that, I mean, it's everything that you're saying. It's also just to be kind of as specific as you possibly can be, because the amount of times that people will send me an email that was like, I absolutely loved his Dark Materials, it was my favorite show of all time. And it's like, yes, I work at Bad Wolf, I didn't actually work on his Dark Materials. That has nothing to do with me. So if you want to work on that show and you love that company because of that, actually emailing me is not the right person. You should be emailing Dan McCulloch, who is better than I am and would love the email, but just send it to the right person, basically.
Yeah. Or if you're applying for a specific show, at least have watched the show. Because
that's
I have honestly interviewed people for specific shows who have never watched it. So
yeah. I would also say, for me, in the drama world, that a clean driving license is a real asset. I mean, I know, you know, it's expensive to pass your test, but I do have sometimes just to rule out people on the grounds that they can't drive, so they're not going to be able to get to where I need them roaming around. So if you can possibly blag it, borrow cars, etc., I think it's a real investment in your career, in certain roles. Are there any kind of really common mistakes that drive you guys nuts when people are approaching you or when you see their CVs? Zoe says yes.
Yeah. To going back to basics, I think, as you can imagine, I get a lot of speculative CVs saying, you know, can you keep me on file for any future work, which is great. I normally try and reply to everyone, but obviously sometimes things get overlooked, but I do file them all. And you can imagine if, say, you get like 20 CVs in a day, and then you want to file them into like runners, researchers, directors, whatever, and it just comes to you as my latest CV ... And it's like, oh, so now that means the hiring manager or me has to go into the CV, rename it, work out who it is, what the job is, you know, May 21. And then, I might do that if I've got a spare few minutes, but an exec producer or producer is not going to have the time or the will to do that. So they'll probably get binned. So please remember, you know, when you're sending CVs out, clearly, you know, name, job, and it helps to have like May 2021 as well, so we know how long it was. That's a really simple thing, but you'd be amazed how many people send them in with just CV. And the other thing, of course, is have a professional email address. We've had some wild email addresses, and it doesn't make you look very professional. So maybe set up a new account that you use for work.
It's quite interesting, that tightrope walk between the personal and standing out and the professional, because yes, I know exactly what Zoe's on about. When you get an email address that says pinky squirrel at, pardon. And sometimes I do get sent, you know, majorly multicolored CVs with lots of fancy fonts. And again, for me, that is a bit of a turn off. But I also understand that, you know, you, applicant, you need to be you. You know, we are looking, it's a creative world, and we are looking to find out who are you. So that's a kind of challenge, really. There's no solution to that, I don't think. It's, you know, again, it's what are my real strengths? What is my awful word? There's an awful word in television called your unique, what is it? USP, unique sales point?
Selling point, yeah.
Selling point, a unique selling point, sorry. And everybody has one. It's asking yourself, what is it really? And identifying it, rather than pretending to be somebody you're not, which is always a catastrophe, particularly at interview. I once pretended to speak good Italian for a job interview, and the person interviewing me was an Italian.
Oh God.
Very, very messy and embarrassing. Does anyone have any other, you know, big avoid this at all costs kind of? No. Let's have can anyone give us some help on, you know, how do you find jobs? Where are they advertised? Where do you look? I think we've a bit touched on it, but
yeah, I think it's changed quite a lot. You know, I can speak from what we do at Boom. Everything we do goes on our website, but there's more sort of sharing on social media, because we don't want to sort of always be reliant, like David was saying, of going back into that same old circle. So there's a huge drive at Boom at the moment to get our jobs and training opportunities out to as wide and diverse a community as we possibly can. We do use Talent Manager, Production Base. We use Screen Alliance Wales a lot. I second what David said about they're great. You know, Alison and the team are just a driving force, and I think that's going to go from strength to strength in helping us bring more people into the industry. But at entry level, I think one of the best tips I'd give is look at the company website, because they do try and get the word out there, but that's sort of on you to go and sort of look who the big players are, look at all the different independents in Wales and go for them. But to join some of the Facebook groups, because when you're looking for that last minute sort of runner, or, you know, it's not even just entry level roles. It can, sometimes you need a production manager next week because something's come up. There's a few good Facebook groups where they're posted constantly. And I think when you get that first in, because you might have the driving license or you might have the skills and stuff, once your face is known, it's really easy then to keep getting known. And also people like Zoe and myself and a lot of people across Wales who are crewing will post, or we might see somebody else's post and go, oh, hang on, what about this person? Because we do have a network, and it's sort of easy for anyone to join those Facebook groups and follow them. And it's a great way of sort of trying to get new people into the industry, not just relying on the same old faces that we always go back to.
I just wanted to ask you guys a little bit about, so you've landed your first job. How then do you stand out, make a good impression, keep working? David, do you want to have a go at that?
I mean, it's a great question, and it literally depends on the role that you're doing. But I think that at like an entry level role, especially at an indie, I've worked within the BBC as well, and it was ever so slightly different there because obviously it's like a behemoth of an organization and everyone has their own lanes a little bit more. That's not a catch-all rule, to be fair, but like at an indie especially, like the teams tend to be a lot smaller, so you may have interviewed to be whatever, like an assistant script editor, but like if you need somebody to just help run on this shoot for 3 days or something, then be that person who wants to do anything, essentially within reason, to just make yourself available, I think is the key to at entry level, for sure. Just being willing to muck in wherever is necessary, even if it's not necessarily the lane that you wanted to be doing, because the people above you will notice and appreciate.
And it also is good for you to learn. You know, you might not be what you want to do, but the more experience you have across more different departments. I started as a runner, which I think is the best possible way, because I dipped into everything. And then I had sort of the grounding behind me of choosing what I thought my skill might still be questionable, not sure. But I think David's right. Just embrace every opportunity you're given and do it to the best of your ability, because it will stand you in good stead for yourself as well, in terms of sort of experiencing as much as you possibly can.
And if you can get, you know, once you get on to set, it's quite hard to know from when you just started out exactly what path you want to go down. And actually life would be pretty boring if you just stayed in one lane all the way. But I mean, when you sort of get onto set or in the office, as long as you pick your moment, it's fine to ask questions of people around you. Like, obviously, if they're going for a take, you're going to stand at the back and shut up. But there are going to be times when they're setting up for the next scene or whatever, if you're in drama. And, you know, if you're interested in sound, if you're a runner, but you're interested in sound, for example, then there'll be a time where there's a bunch of people standing around the tea table. And it's you can pick that opportunity to ask questions of the soundy, who will absolutely love talking to you about sound, because people in telly love talking about telly. So they're going to be delighted if you take an interest in what they're doing and ask them some questions, as long as it's not, relentless and annoying. But if you pick your moment where someone's quiet and offset, ask questions, find out more, because that's how you learn which avenue floats your boat, really.
I think that's really good advice about the questions.
I'm glad it wasn't just terrible.
I think what things you don't know, and you just have no idea what they're on about. But you say, are we still all in touch? I don't know. Can someone in the chat box tell me whether we're still in contact?
I think we can hear you now, Jane.
Okay, great. Sorry. Okay, good. Should we just have a positive, who inspires you in telly? Who, what's your dream? Where do you want to be? David?
I knew you were going to come to me first.
Oh, right.
Who inspires me? Like, I'm inspired. It's a great question. So look, I really like the kind of the creative heads. I work in scripted, like I'm a drama guy, right? So all my stuff is always that way. So I really like, she's my boss, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention her, right? But like Jane Tranter and Julie Gardner and Andy Harries and Jane Featherstone, these people who are, and Patrick Spence over at ITV, these people who are like amazing creatives who have made some of the best TV that basically kind of made co-pros in that way, like these big, ambitious dramas that will exist on Netflix. And, you look at the success of Chernobyl, or you look at the success of The Crown, that have made Hollywood look at Britain and be like, actually, I'll have some of that, which helps South Wales, which has helped Wales for sure with the filming opportunities because of the work of some of these amazing people. So that's kind of like where I would want to get to. Like, I would love to own my own slice of that pie, and to be able to be like, I wholly created and managed and outputted this TV program.
How about you, Zoe?
For me, it's the people who get out there and tell their own stories and docs. I have such respect for good documentary filmmakers, and I think these days, if you're just starting out and you're interested in docs, then not only can you learn by really analysing the wealth of docs that are out there across, you know, Netflix, Amazon, BBC, Channel 4, all commissioning and showing amazing documentaries. So you can learn from those by looking at it and then dissecting like how they make it, what's the structure. And then these days, I mean, even just iPhones and basic editing, if you can find stories and, you know, learn your trade by just going out there and doing it. I mean, obviously different to drama, it's much more high spec, budget needs to be big, but telling stories, you know, for docs, you could do quite basically, even with podcasts and stuff these days. And the way to learn is just by getting out there and doing it.
Siobhan, what about you?
Well, I thought about this because I think often we sort of think who inspires you, and you sort of look at those who are ahead of you in your career, have done more than you. But I've got to be honest, I'm sort of inspired by all our production teams on a daily basis. I look at them and they're sort of, when they've got budgetary complications or time scales, and they just do a fantastic job and come up with answers every day. And they do this day in, day out. So I've got a huge respect for everybody who works, you know, in production. Personally, on my journey, I've been very, very lucky. I've had some fantastic mentors who've taken a chance on me. The first person who sort of took a chance on me was a lady called Gwenda Griffith, who's formidable in Welsh TV. She really took a chance on me. And then my current boss, Nia Thomas at Boom, who's the MD, you know, she took a huge chance on me 10 years ago, putting me into this role and has mentored me every day. And I always kind of, that's where I aim to be, and that's who I want to be as good as. So I guess that's my day to day, but also I think, you know, everyone who works in it deserves us to doff our hats to them.
Brilliant. I'm just going to click on the Q&A now, and these are what the listeners have put in, and just see if we can run through a few of those. Can you other guys, David, Zoe, Siobhan, can you see them all as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. So, there's some lovely specific ones here, isn't there?
I've just spotted one about shadowing, and I know because I was on a call with Alison from Screen Alliance Wales, and she said that very soon, you know, because government guidelines are going to be relaxed a bit, that in the summer they'll definitely be opening that up. And same for us at BBC, our work experience had to shut down for a year, but we're hoping that's going to be up and running in the summer, and we offer that 4 times a year on different productions. So there's a quick answer to one for you.
There's an interesting next 2 that sort of belong to each other, I think, about long hours, lack of certain protections, and the healthy work-life balance. So would anyone, I tell you, actually, I can do that. I think actually those of us in these industries, we need to, you know, unite and kind of be vocal about making sure that people are not broken by their jobs. I mean, I'm shooting at the moment, and you know, we're not very far in, and I have people in tears on a daily basis, and I think it's wrong, and we are doing absolutely everything we can to sort it out. I think with the lower paid roles, I don't think you should be offered, or you should accept anything that is below minimum wage. And if you are, you know, there are trade unions, there's BEC2, you need to get your case heard, and you need allies. Any production company or production worth working for will not rip you off. And if people are asking you to do way too much for too little, don't do it. You know, we have to stay strong and get united about that one. Has anybody got any tips on work-life balance? There isn't any.
I think you have to sort of, I think there's never been more emphasis on this, and it's really important at the moment. But what I try and encourage is that everybody can, that it's not unacceptable to put your hand up and say, do you know what, I need help, or I'm doing too many hours. I think there needs to be sort of a clear communication with your line manager, or even further up the chain. And we really try and sort of promote that, because it is a very different culture to when people like I joined 25 years ago, you know, and we need to sort of be kind to ourselves, but also to each other. And I think we're all in this together, and there's a joint responsibility, and from companies and employers, to make sure that we're getting this right, you know, because it is a team effort, and a happy team makes life easier for everybody.
I think it's always a tricky one, this. I remember for a very, very long time, I mean, Zoe, you'd probably be able to tell me now whether it still exists, but on the BBC application forms, it always would say that drama, you know, has unpredictable and long hours. And it's just the truth. Like, we shoot for like 10 hours on camera. It can be 12 hours days. If you work in costume and makeup in particular, then you're there earlier and you're de-rigging after. So it can be tough. But like, I just sort of want to say that, like, it's also up to your employers to just make sure that, like, when you can give time back, it's taken back, and that people don't take it for granted. You know, I'm of the opinion that, like, my script editors, if it's 5 o'clock and they're sort of done, then they should go home, because there'll be another day where we have to get scripts out, or we're doing amends the day before filming, and I might need them to stay till 8 o'clock. So there needs to be some give and take with it. But it just, we may as well just be honest, and it's not a 9-to-5 job. This isn't a 9-to-5
definitely
job.
not. And you do have to accept that, don't you? And you have to accept that it could be your mum's birthday, but you're stood in a field in the middle of Wales filming a drama. You can't be there. You know, that's just, you can't say, I can't come to set tomorrow, you know, it's my birthday. You just got to suck it up. But, you know, when it becomes dangerous and people aren't getting adequate breaks and stuff, and that's when you got to flag it. I mean, really, if it feels wrong, it usually is wrong, and you should call it out, you know. And it's much better, as Sharon says, you know, it's way better than it was even 5 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
There are some useful lobbying groups as well. There's an organisation for parents within the industry, and again, women in film and television, because I think this freelance life is discriminatory against women who want to have children. You know, you look at most women at the top of television, and quite a few of them do not have children. It is changing, and I think it's down to all of us to keep it moving, honestly. And there's an interesting question here from Ntuba about how hard is it for a foreign national without a British accent to work as an actor in British shows. Is that one for you, David?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there's no discrimination in the casting process as long as you fit the brief, I guess, which sort of by its very nature is discriminatory, because we might be looking for a woman 20s, 30s with a northern accent, right? So, like, obviously, if you can do that, it doesn't actually matter where you're from. And Black actors, especially in the United Kingdom, often go to America. Daniel Kaluuya, play an American, win an Oscar. Idris Elba, he got his break in America playing an American, and then we laud them then, and they come back and they get their own TV shows or whatever it is. So I think I'm answering that question, which is like, I don't, just because you're not a foreign national, just because you are a foreign national, it wouldn't mean that you couldn't be cast as long as you could fit the brief that you were auditioning for.
I think as well, maybe target casting directors, because what you have is actually a niche. You're rare, but they probably, casting directors don't know about you. And I think it's something casting directors discourage this because they can't be bothered. But if you can research who they are and contact them direct, saying, you know, I'm niche. And nowadays, and again, post-lockdown, the Zoom casting is so common. If you can send a tiny little film clip of yourself, 9 out of 10 of them, they probably won't watch it. But it's the 10th one who does that will get you known. And then hopefully when the right role comes up, bosh. Mm-hmm. There's another one from Laura Davis, who is from France, who is also looking at the particular challenges of that. Is anyone? So lots of jobs are Welsh-based, hey. So no, I've lived in Wales for 30 years. And actually, for me, that's been a kind of crippling disaster because all the work is in London. So I don't think you do need to relocate, Laura. I think you just need to tackle London head on.
Yeah, as long as you buy a city, from what I can see on the different, because the different sites I post on, there are constantly jobs in London, Manchester, Glasgow, Cardiff, Bristol, so I think all the principles are the same, really, no matter where you're based. It makes it more difficult if you're kind of further out of a city, you've got to commute a lot of the time. But obviously when you're on location, that could be anywhere.
Yeah, but currently I think more so in non-scripted, because of COVID, it doesn't particularly matter where you are. If you look at sort of our factual or anything that's like Zoe just said, if you're on location, yes, you need to get to location, but none of us are working in the office really at the moment anyway, so your research or your AP or anything can be anywhere. So now is a really good time to try and get those roles, because it doesn't matter hugely where you are. You've got more leeway now before we sort of all do end up at some point back in the office. The opportunities are out there.
And I think also just, your very specific thing, which is like, do I need to relocate in order to apply? I mean, the answer to that, as far as I'm concerned, is like, no. As long as you say that you're willing to relocate, and then all these other answers apply, which is like a lot of the times right now, people are working from home, and so it's not really an issue anyway. But like, I definitely wouldn't relocate for a job that you don't have yet.
I think there is a parallel BAFTA Guru Live that's sent out from London. I think this one is slightly misleading, perhaps because we're talking BAFTA Cymru and BAFTA Scotland. So going back to a question at the top of the list, somebody is asking, how difficult is it to migrate between TV and film?
So I feel like that's a scripted question. I think that historically it was quite difficult. Lots of people stayed in their own lanes. Film looked down on TV thought whatever they thought about film. But actually the walls have come down. You look at an actress like Nicole Kidman or whatever doing Big Little Lies and all of these great shows on HBO and things like that these days. So actually you find regularly that people move between the two. This is more specific to crew though. So the carpenters, the sparks, costume, hair, makeup. When it comes to like editorial, like what producers do a little bit more, script editors, things like that, they don't exist in the film world in quite the same way. So like, it depends on what side of the tracks you want to be on. But if it's crew that you want to do, then absolutely, like, you will be able to move across these days.
There's another question here about the dear sir or madam problem, and somebody is saying that they are struggling to find the right person to email, and company websites and LinkedIn don't always give the answer. What are usually the job titles? Sorry, dogs and doorbell. What are usually the job titles of the people that do read the CVs? Maybe that's, yes. Zoe and Siwan?
Yeah. So big companies will have a talent team of sorts. Lots of the big indies do now, actually. But otherwise, it'll often be a production manager. Wouldn't you agree, Siwan? Some, execs do get a lot of unfielded emails as well, but they might not always look at them. But I think the people at entry level, the people who hire the runners, and in our case, like junior researchers and stuff, tends to be the production managers.
Yeah, I think in our company we have we do have everyone sort of on the website, but most CVs tend to go into HR, and we, you know, HR do sort of forward them to myself, and I have a look, and then I sort of field them out to the people I think that they might be relevant or interesting to. So hopefully, you know, I'm not sure about other websites, but there should be a point of contact, and I think your sort of head of production manager, HR is the best point of contact.
I think sadly, the truth about that question is it's a lot of work for you. We don't necessarily, because we live in creative chaos, we don't necessarily make it easy for you to know who is the right person. And sadly, this is, again, it's to do with the competitiveness, I think. You will have to do an awful lot of legwork and possibly even telephone companies to find out who is the right person.
And sometimes people, like a lot of the time I get asked, do you know of somebody who recruits in Bristol, for example? And then it's great if you can get someone to introduce you via email, because it sort of validates you a bit. You know, you're not just cold calling. And people won't mind doing that. You know, I don't mind doing that at all. If someone said to me, do you mind getting me a contact at Boom? I would happily send their CV to Siwan and say, may I introduce you to so-and-so, they're interested in working with you. So don't be afraid to use your contacts. And, you know, people will try and help if they can.
Yeah, and I think sometimes as well, you come across great new people who you really want to help keep them in the industry. So, you know, sometimes you get somebody in for 2-3 weeks as a runner and you just think, oh, I wish I had more for them. So, you know, with people who've really, really impressed me, I've had their CV and sort of sent it out to other people like Zoe and said, you know what, if you're looking for somebody, this person is absolutely great.
Yeah. And
we've had so many really, really good questions, and I think we're going to try to answer as best we can, type them afterwards. But I just wanted to end up with this one. What do we have to say about older, experienced people who may be crossing from another industry or returning to work? How does an older person find a way in? Any thoughts?
I'd say it's pretty much the same.
No different, really. No, we don't have any upper age limits on any of our schemes, or there's no, I mean, you might have to take a step back to go forward. You may have to take a bit of a salary cut if you've been on quite a high salary, or because you do need to tread the boards, as it were. You can't, there aren't really many shortcuts, so you may have to take a step back to go forward, but all the same principles.
I think as well, it is about, you know, focusing on what are your skills. You will have them, you know, you've been in the working world. What are your skills? And then what does that suit you to in the new world you want to step into? Brilliant. Thank you all so very much. Let me read my notes. Sorry. Really, many, many thanks to our speakers. You've done us a great job. Thank you to our partners, Screen Alliance Wales, that we talk about a lot, Pontio and Bangor University. We really hope you've enjoyed listening. Thank you for your questions. Please do carry on the conversation using the hashtag GuruLive. And that's, I think, us. Thank you all so much.
Good luck, everyone.
Yes.
Good luck. Thank you.